Hi, Stanford. Kind of going off the conversation that we've been having this week about kind of plotting tactics and making sure plot is equal parts content and structure. I wanted to share something that I learned when I was putting my first book together, some things that meant the world to me. It came up during our week 2 chat, and somebody asked if I would kind of comment about it further. It seemed like it was going to be such kind of a verbose topic that a video might suffice better than a simple forum post. So it doesn't necessarily matter whether or not you've read the book. We're just going to be talking about the architecture of the book and kind of how I put the book together. The book is covering two different stories or two different storylines in the main character's life. The book is about a guy named Rhonda, and one of the stories takes place when he's about 30 years old, living in the Mission District of San Francisco. And that is told like a present action, a la Eli and Charlie's Sisters' adventures in The Sisters Brothers. Kind of one kind of string of cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. So I wrote that as its own sort of novella, this kind of, 100, 120 page wind sprint. I knew that that was kind of going to be kind of the bulk of the book, but I also wanted to render this man's childhood. And I wanted to render his childhood in a way that I had never seen before in another novel. Mainly, I wanted to intersperse self contained vignettes about his childhood. And when I say vignettes, I mean that each little story has its own beginning, middle, and ending. So, for example, chapter 1 of the book would be Rhonda, 30 years old, living in San Francisco. Chapter 2 would be this self contained vignette of only 750 words that would have its own beginning and a middle and an ending. Chapter 3, we're back to him being 30 years old in San Francisco. Chapter 4, another self contained vignette with its own beginning and a middle and an ending. The cool thing, or what I thought was the cool thing about structuring this book this way, is there was never going to be kind of one crucial memory per se from his kind of coming of age. It was going to be kind of this slow accumulation of details. Memory one will tell you one thing about Rhonda's childhood. Memory two will tell you another thing about Rhonda's childhood. Number three will tell you something else, so on and so forth. So by the time you've interacted with all of them, and there's probably, I would say, 15 of them in the book, you have a very comprehensive view of what his childhood was comprised of. It's never just, oh, aha, it's just this one thing that you need to know. Life is rarely works that way. That's kind of a reductive way to think about the open-endedness of human experience. But if you have all these different memories, then you can start to kind of compile your own version of the house that he grew up in and how his coming of age experience informed the person that he is now, meaning now in the present action of the book when he's 30 years old and doing the crazy things that this guy does during the duration of the book. Now, even though there's only about 15 vignettes from his childhood, I probably wrote, I don't know, 60 of them, 70 of them, and maybe even 80 of them. It was really hard for me to get the tone of those vignettes right because I found myself wanting to say the same thing over and over again. Um, uh, Rhonda lives with his mom and his mother's boyfriend. His mother's boyfriend is named Lech, and Lech is not a very nice person to Rhonda. And I find myself saying the same thing every vignette. Every vignette was saying, Lech is a bastard. Lech is a bastard. Lech is a bastard. And man, I wrote the book and I was getting tired of hearing me say the same thing over and over again. So I knew that I was kind of spinning my wheels in the mud and I had to try to find a new way to talk about Rhonda's coming of age. So finally, this is probably the 40th vignette that I had written. Um, It's a story about Rhonda's getting bullied at school, and Lech teaches him like this fighting move. So Rhonda goes to school, does this fighting move, kicks this other kid's ass, and gets suspended from school. And Lech is incredibly proud of Rhonda. And then, even though Rhonda is only about 12 years old, Lech takes him out and buys him a steak and a beer. And there's a kind of there's a line of direct address in which kind of where the narrator is actually talking to the audience. And what he says to the audience is, I don't know how much to tell you about Lech because I don't want you to like him. But the fact of the matter is, more often than not, he was pretty nice to me. Once I had written that line, the book came alive in entirely new ways. The 39 vignettes that I had written before all hit the cutting room floor. And I realized that the book is actually going to be more sad. The book will be more devastating if I don't paint Lech as this kind of Darth Vader character. He can still be a bastard on Thursday, and yet maybe does something on Friday that's generous. On Saturday, maybe he does something that's selfless. On Sunday, maybe he just does something that's funny. And it makes the reader have to spin her wheels about that. Like, wow, I had put this person in this bucket where I had dismissed him as a bad person. And now I'm learning these other things about him that aren't necessarily bad. What the hell am I supposed to do with this information? It makes it for a very complicated, dynamic characterization, which I think is all of our goals. We don't want to render these like flat, archetypal characters where we say, this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, this is the bad woman, this is the good woman. But we want every character to exist in that kind of wonderful tangle of strengths and weaknesses, where they do have their good points, but they have their negative points too. So I just wanted to kind of share my disastrous encounter with structure as I was putting my first book together, where all 39 of those vignettes had to hit the cutting room floor. But once I've made that crucial discovery, and this was probably after I'd been working on the book about 2 years, man, that was when I started to really cook with gas. And that was when the book got as complicated as great literary fiction should be. That we're never giving easy answers, we're never reducing our characters down to one-liners, but they're human beings like the rest of us. They have their strengths and they have their weaknesses, and more often than not, they're trying to do the best they can in this world. So that was kind of my adventure with plot and structure with my first book. And if you're having any more questions about that, feel free to post them here, or if you have kind of comments to augment this thread, feel free to post them here as well. Thanks.